Hello, welcome to the latest edition of the Serious About Rugby League show. I'm Peter Smith of the Yorkshire Evening Post, joined this week by James O'Brien from the Yorkshire Post and the two Sams of Serious About Rugby League, Sam Cook and Sam Brocksom. Before we start, usual request, please like this video, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, really helps us, and take part in our poll, please. Last week, we asked you who was going to finish bottom of Super League, and Bradford Bulls were overwhelmingly your choice. 68% think Bradford will finish bottom, 25% Hull FC, and 8% Giants. So that's certainly flipped around from recent weeks when Giants were hot favourites. This week's poll, who do you think will be the next Castleford Tigers coach? The options we'll put forward for you are Luke Robinson, who's obviously the former Huddersfield Giants boss, who's now an assistant at Castleford. Paul Rowley, ex-Salford, who was at Saints this season and left midway through the campaign. And Ian Watson, the former Salford and Huddersfield boss, who's now at Hull KR. Or suggest someone else in the comments. So let us know what you think about that. Reviewing last week, let's start with a bit of good news. The RFL say that Super League attendances for this year have now reached a forecast 1.68 million. I'm not quite sure what they mean by the forecasts have reached the forecast, but anyway, it's the highest attendance total in Super League's history after 24 rounds, surpassing the previous record by 4%. And the competition's in a strong position to reach 2 million attendances, including the playoffs and grand final. There's a lot of complaining about Super League and sort of feeling disappointed with the way things have been going recently. James, this shows that fans are rallying around the competition. It's great news, isn't it, for the sport?
It is, yeah. And I think old fellas like us, we look back at the start of Super League as probably the peak, and it peaked then with the big crowds like we saw for the Bradford Leeds derbies at Odsall and Headingley, Wigan Saints, regularly over 20,000 fans packed in. But yeah, maybe we're just wrong, and this is actually, we're peaking now in terms of attendances. So yeah, the appetite's there from the fans to go through the gate still, and that's really encouraging at a time when every game is on TV as well. So that obviously hasn't hindered it, got in the way of people going to games. So yeah, it is really encouraging. I'm not sure the product is as good, is the best it's ever been. Like I say, I think back at the start, I love those days. I'm a bit like that, sentimental, looking back, that nostalgia. But yeah, no, it is really encouraging, and hopefully this is the big test is when the playoffs come around. They seem to dip, don't they? Which is crazy, really, when you think about it. These are the games that matter. And how many times do you see? I'm not picking on Wigan here, but Wigan in the semi-final, they don't pack it out, do they? So hopefully it carries all the way through to the playoffs, and we have some sellout crowds as well, just before Old Trafford, and that would really, hopefully, get a packed house at Old Trafford as well, regardless of who's playing. I think at the moment, a lot of people and all season thought it was going to be Leeds, Wigan. That may still be the case, but there are some teams in there who are coming on strong, like Leeds and Warrington. So it's set up for a really good playoff series, and hopefully, like I say, we get some big crowds as well.
That's James O'Brien. James O'Brien of the Yorkshire Post saying that Wigan fans don't support big games. So I'd just like to make that perfectly clear. James O'Brien, not the rest of us. Sam B, do you think that the fans are getting value for money this season?
I think it goes back to what James said. I think the product is certainly probably declined from, say 20 years ago, but I still think, you're getting, I think because you can't, most of the games are on the red button, you can't, really record and watch them on demand. So I think that's more, enticing people to go. If you can't watch them back, you might as well just go to the game. The scheduling still needs sorting, but I think, the product itself, it's still exciting. The faster rucks are supposed to, make the game quicker, but, I don't think they have this season. But yeah, I still think they're getting, the money's worth. I think, there's a whole conversation about ticket prices and whether that day should be reduced. But, I think this season, especially with the competitiveness of the season, I think, fans are getting the money's worth, and, it's going to go down to the final round, it looks like, in the case of, Hull KR and St Helens. So, yeah, I think it's been a good season. I think, there's still, plenty more rugby left to play, and, we still don't know who's going to finish top. We still don't know who's going to finish in the sixth. We still don't know who's going to finish bottom. So, yeah, there's still a lot to play for, I think.
Yeah, Sam Cook, we've got uncertainty of outcome this season, haven't we? There've been probably more shock results than I can remember in a season. Results like York beating Hull KR, York beating St Helens, Wigan, who look unstoppable at the moment, have lost at home to Huddersfield and Cass, and Toulouse have won, who were promoted from the Championship on half the funding of everyone else, won at St Helens, and they hammered Hull KR the other day on Hull KR's home turf. So, that you go to a game not knowing who's going to win. I mean, obviously there are one-sided results that go the way you'd expect, like Leeds winning at York at the weekend. But there's certainly some surprises out there.
Yeah, I think it has been good, but I think also, like you say, there is a definite depth or lack of quality. I think you do see that come this back end of the year when you've got teams on bare bones. I mean, can Bradford get 17 for next week? Like, and I know they're one of the teams who've come up on full funding. I think they've obviously been a bit more unlucky with injuries than either York or Toulouse. But again, then some of these coming games, whilst there are some that we're really, really looking forward to, there are others that I think both teams would almost be like, yeah, let's just not play it. We'll save ourselves for the week after and for the season after, because I think that is the reality. So I think there's two sides of the argument, but generally, as you say, in terms of attendances, in terms of the excitement at the top, because we now do have a genuine sort of top two battle, I think it's been a really strong season. I think the attendances are obviously a justification of that. As mentioned, the fact that games are on TV, it can give people an excuse not to go to games, but they're still getting out, they're still going. I think going forward, I can't see why it won't improve again. I think teams, more and more fans are going to want to go to clubs like York. I think Odsal, if they can improve it, more and more fans are going to want to go there. I think there's reasons to be excited. Maybe if London come up, that's an away day that might tempt a few people. I think whilst this is a new high this year, potentially with 2 million that they're talking about, I don't see why they can't go beyond again next year, and that's probably the most exciting part.
I think I need to backtrack because I've just checked the Wigan's attendances for the last two semis against Lee, and they were very strong. So I apologise to Wigan fans. And it was actually Leeds who only drew 11,000 against Saints last year. So maybe it was a bit closer to I know Wigan fans have been seething for the last 5 minutes, so I just thought I'd apologise.
Hull KR, it's been a bad week for them, hasn't it? The defending champions. Home defeats by Warrington and Toulouse. They're in serious danger of dropping out of the top six, considering Saints are starting to pick up a bit of form. Tough game at Wigan, this week. James, they're one of your teams. Are they going to qualify for the playoffs, Hull KR?
Yeah, well, they've got a bit of a buffer, haven't they, with the points difference, but they do go to Saints in the last round, and that's set up to be a really, really big game, obviously. Unless Hull KR manage to get over the line between now and then. They've got Huddersfield in the final home game, but obviously on the past few days, nothing is guaranteed at Craven Park anymore. It was a fortress, wasn't it, for a very long time. They went a year without losing, and then Waker went there and won, and now the home form's collapsed a little bit. So yeah, I think I don't want to defend them too much because it goes beyond tiredness, but I think it's been a bit of a perfect storm for OKR this year. They have played every week, and now it's got to the business end of playing 4 games in 2 weeks, which has just finished them off, I think. So even if they do limp into the playoffs, I don't expect them to go past the first round. I mean, they have got a side that could lift for a playoff game, but they're not going to lift for 3 playoff games. I just don't think they've got that in them. So if they do get through the eliminators, I wouldn't expect them to get to another grand final, which was a real shame for Willie Peters' reign to end this way. But like I say, they're just that first month where you've got the World Club Challenge, then you got Vegas the following week. They have recovered from that in a way, and they went on a winning run, but they never really convinced like they did last year. I think it's just caught up with them now, and it's hard to see them doing much in the playoffs, unfortunately.
Sam Cook, do you think this is a result of them really not having a deep enough squad? They've gone sort of top heavy on big signings and thrown a lot into the first sort of 17, but do they have enough below that?
I'm not sure about in terms of the squad depth of what they've signed, but it's the fact they don't have an academy or a system where they can kind of really trust and throw those players in. I mean, you look at Wigan, and I appreciate we're talking about clubs that have historically been, at the very top, but the reason they've been at the top is because they've produced their own talent. So you look at Wigan and you look at Leeds, even Saints to an extent. If Saints have had so many top-line injuries, but at the moment, I know it's not all season, but at the moment they are getting through games, and their young players are really stepping up to the fore. Warrington, I think, having thrown money at trying to win a grand final and never come in. Well, have they got to 4 grand finals and lost them all? They've never won one. They've kind of now realised, let's go to the academy, and they've obviously put a lot of their work into that for the past 5-10 years. I'm not sure how long, but the fruits of that labour are really paying off now. And I think Hull KR, if this isn't a sign to those at the top of the club that that's what they need to do, then I'm not sure what is, because you look at the kind of just players almost being flogged. It feels like the same players are going round and round again, and you just think, well, not only do young players bring fresh legs, but they also a lot of the time bring sort of a naivety about them that can really, really lift a team. And I think you've seen that with, again, all those clubs I've just mentioned. I think of UNO and at Warrington. I think of, Zach Lloyd in the past couple of weeks at Leeds. I think Tom Humphries is someone I've really liked at St Helens. I think they all have things and they all bring different elements. KR haven't had that. And I think now they're at a point where, the injuries have mounted up. I think James Batchelor didn't play on Tuesday night because he had a hamstring injury. He plays on Saturday and he suffers a hamstring injury. And it's like, well, if they had a player like Zach Lloyd, who, you could really trust to go in there and play in that second row, then James Batchelor's potentially not injured now. And I know it does feel quite easy to bash on Hull KR at the moment, but I think what they need to do is take a step back and admit that they won't come close in this game against Wigan on Thursday. So they should do to Wigan what Wigan did to them before the Challenge Cup final and just play kids. And I know I've just said that they don't really have that many kids. It is a bit, throwing the lambs to the wolves. But that game against Huddersfield now for them is their grand final. If they're going to make the playoffs, they have to win that game. So don't let anyone get injured or banned, which itself has proven an issue in recent weeks, and just play the kids against Wigan. I think Willie Peters will be uncomfortable in doing so, but I think for me, that's what you have to do. But we'll see when they announce the squad tomorrow.
Sam B, we know that Mikey Lewis and Tavita Pangai Jr. are banned for this upcoming game, but they were dropped effectively for the Toulouse match. That's a big decision by Willie Peters, isn't it, the coach? What did you make of that?
Yeah, obviously, I think there was a bit of uncertainty because obviously when the bans were announced, they said that they came into effect, for the Wigan game, and then we saw that they'd been dropped. So we didn't know if Hull KR got a bit confused, but it wasn't. Willie Peters said the standards have slipped, that there needs to be consequences for the actions, and and rightly so. You've got Mikey Lewis, I think banned for 6 games of the last 8, something like that, just for petulance, and is their star man. He's their highest paid player, and you can't have him sitting on the sidelines for petulance, and he's not injured. He's just doing it off his own accord because he's stressed and frustrated, and you just can't have that in Super League when you top players like that. And then Pangai Jr., I think he's been suspended for 10 games this season. So yeah, it's just still discipline, isn't it? And it just it just seems to be running through the first team squad at the minute. But it's a bold call from Willie Peters, dropping your star man. But hopefully it proves a point to Mikey Lewis, and hopefully after this ban, maybe he'll learn. But we thought that against Warrington when he returned, and then he gets the 2-match ban. So we'll see. But I think it was the right decision from Willie Peters. But yeah, hopefully it's a learning curve for Mikey Lewis especially.
Yeah, Saints will no doubt be delighted that Hull KR are having these problems of suspensions and the players obviously looking tired and struggling now to come up with big performances in big games because Saints have had all these injury problems this year, but now start to be getting players back. Some young players have got good experience and they're right in there, aren't they? They'll fancy the chances against Leeds this week, which we'll talk about in our preview show later. But what, James, what did you make of Saints against Castleford Tigers the other day? 36-12 to Saints, but the big talking point was a red card for Jackson Hastings and sin binning for Castleford's Tyler Dupree, and his reaction to that. He seemed to have a real head loss, and Scott Morrell, Castleford's assistant coach, had to get in the way and sort of pull him back, which didn't look great on TV. What did you make of all that?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that happens when your coach has just left. There's no one really in charge, and your club's seemingly in turmoil. There isn't the same accountabilities. And just going back to the whole, I know we've just moved on from Hull KR, but there's a similar situation there. Willie Peters is leaving, and it's all unravelled since then, hasn't it? Well, probably before then, given the stuff we were talking about earlier. But yeah, it can go that way, and that's what's happened with Dupree there. He's obviously, there's a lot of frustration that's come to the surface there, and he's lost his head. He's got a bit of a slap as well on the field, and that'll probably land Hastings a ban and rule him out of the Leeds game. But yeah, Cass, I don't know if we're talking about Saints or Cass now. I've moved on to Cass, but yeah, just where did they go from here? We touched on it last week. We talked about it at length last week. But yeah, I know Martin Jepson came out and said we're not in turmoil and all this, but I think they are, aren't they? Given how many coaches they've gone through, I think that's 6 since Darryl Powell left. I think they're looking for the 7th now. So yeah, I think they were 30-0 down at half time. They did well to keep it respectable in the end. But St Helens, yeah, they're looking good at the moment, but they have got a tough run in, haven't they? They've got obviously Leeds this week, which you mentioned, Pete, and then they've got Lee. I think they've got Lee, and then they've got Hull KR at home. So they need to win one of those next two to set up the chance to go above Hull KR in the final round. So yeah, Saints are looking better. They're looking a threat, and I think last year they looked like they might lose their ever-present playoff record. It might have been the year before. I can't remember which one, but they pulled it back towards the end and sneaked in. But yeah, I can't see them doing it this year. I think Hull KR will put all their eggs in that Huddersfield basket, get the win there, and then that'll make Saints' job very difficult.
So let's go around everybody. Who is going to miss out then on the top 6? It looks like it's either going to be Hull KR or St Helens. Sam C, start with you. What do you reckon?
I think St Helens, just mainly because their schedule's just so tough. I think, as James mentioned, the points difference at the moment it's 221. So even if you say, Saints beat KR, that's 111 point win they need. It's not happening. So the Saints need one more win than KR. I think, like we said, KR just need to go all in Huddersfield. KR beat Huddersfield, and Saints need to beat one of Lee or Leeds, which is a really tough ask. And I think that's probably just enough for KR to scrape in and Saints to miss out. But I wouldn't be certain of KR beating Huddersfield at this point.
Sam B?
Yeah, well, before this, I'd have said Hull KR. I think Sam might have convinced me. And I think especially the fact that, St Helens have got Jackson Hastings banned, I just think it's a little bit too much to do for St Helens. But what a story it'd be just with the injuries. I know, playoffs is a minimum for St Helens as an expectation, but with the season that they've had, what a story it'd be, if they could clinch it, and especially on the final day as well. But yeah, I do think they're going to be the ones that miss out this year.
So that's 2 for St Helens missing out. James?
Yeah. I pretty much said St Helens there, didn't I? But now I'm thinking Leeds going to St Helens. I don't really fancy Leeds in that one, to be honest with you. Based on recent history, I know they beat Saints at Headingley, didn't they, earlier in the year? But the record is dreadful against St Helens. So it's a real 50-50, if not in Saints' favour, given their record. But I think OKR will get another win, probably against Huddersfield, just about. It'll be nervy, but and then Saints need to win this Friday, don't they? I can't see them going to Lee and winning. So yeah, I'll say Saints to miss out, but it might be nervy.
Well, and just for the sake of being different, I'll say OKR. I think Saints have got a real chance of beating Leeds this week, just because Leeds, I know they won earlier in the season against them, but they have a mental block against Saints, particularly in big games. And I'd be a bit pessimistic about that one, particularly if Jake Connor is struggling. He didn't finish the game against York on Sunday, hobbled off. That's going to be a huge concern for Leeds. I don't know who will play in the halves if he doesn't, but he's obviously such a pivotal player for Leeds. I think Saints might just sneak in, but we shall see. The other big debate is the top 3 not sorted yet. Leeds top on points difference from Wigan, with Warrington another couple of points behind. Again, Warrington have maybe not really been talked about that much, have they, Sam C? But as you said earlier, they're getting it together this year, and they've had some really impressive wins. It was a very good win at Hull KR in midweek, and then to beat an in-form Huddersfield team on a short turnaround, good result for them.
Yeah, I think Warrington, like you said, they've just kind of been. Have we maybe disrespected them? I think we've kind of said all along, well, they'll fall off. They'll fall off. That's what Warrington do, and like they had every reason to fall off, not having George Williams. Kai Taylor has missed the majority of the season, and they've been playing with a halves pair who are aged 38, almost as old as Mark Sneyd. And I think they've managed to do it, and they're there now. And I think if they can win out, which I don't see any real reason why they can't, given what they're doing, then they could have a genuine shot, obviously, because of the fact that Wigan play Leeds and points are going to be dropped there. They could have a real shot at getting that top 2, which we all know is so important to get into the grand final. And I just think, like I say, Warrington at the moment, I wouldn't back against them. I think George Williams' return, like how he's managed to come back from the injury, seemingly early in terms of what the initial timelines were, but also it's just how he's hit the ground running so smoothly. I think there's no longer any question for me about who plays 6 for England, which again is another debate. But the fact that he's so assured and confident, and he scored a try at the weekend, and he's involved in making others. I think he made 223 metres, something silly like that. And I'm like, the fact he's just come back so swimmingly is incredible. And anyone now playing against that Warrington team no longer has to think, we've only got, and that's not to be disrespectful, but we've only got, 2 young halves. Got the England half and, a potential generational talent in you and Owen. I think it makes what was already a daunting task even more daunting. I think, I can't remember who they play this week, but I'd favour them to go there and win, because that's just what they're doing at the moment. They're just grinding out wins. I think it's 4 in 15 days. We say about KR having this horrible schedule, but Warrington have had to do the same, at least recently anyway, with those making up the extra game. They've won all 4 of them, and they've won them relatively easy. I know Huddersfield have scored 24 there, but they were never within, outside of taking the lead, when they were mounting the comeback, they were never within 10 points of coming back. It wasn't really in danger, and I think you can probably allow yourself to concede a few late on when you've had such a big shift over the past fortnight. So yeah, Warrington for me. The cruel thing is if it's Wigan, who beat Leeds in those top two, and they win the other games, Leeds would still have a better points difference than Warrington, and Warrington would miss out on like 42 points in third, which is insane. So I think that's the only thing that's not in their hands at the moment, Warrington. But otherwise, I think they've got every chance to make the top two.
Yeah, they go to Hull on Saturday to Warrington. So I mean, you'd probably expect them to win that, wouldn't you? So they'd be level on points with Leeds if Leeds lose at Saints. So yeah, they're right in there. Sam B, could you see Warrington? Is this going to be their year finally?
I think it's the best chance they've got under Sam Burgess. I think they made the semi-final first year, didn't they? I think was it a drop goal by KR in 24, something like that. So they did get very close, but I think this year they've certainly got more of a chance. But then you've got Leeds, Wigan, Lee. Wakefield have kind of dropped off a little bit, but I think you've got more teams that are maybe in contention. So I think Warrington have got more of a chance, but I think there's more teams in and around them that are also looking to knock them off. So I think this is the biggest. This is the best chance this year. I think Sam Burgess's new contract is all but done. So you think that they're grown. Hopefully continue it into next year and kind of make a little bit of not a dynasty, but a little bit of an era of it in the Sam Burgess, under Sam Burgess's leadership. But I think this year is certainly the best chance of winning silverware in a long time.
James, you were sat with me out in the sun at York on Sunday. What did you think of Leeds? They were on the back of a defeat to Lee when they just couldn't get over the line. They scored 12 tries this time. I thought they looked very sharp. What did you think? Do you think, was it a case of York just being so far off the pace, or should we give Leeds credit for a sparkling performance?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. I think when they turned up and saw the dry track and blue skies, it was perfect for Leeds really after a really frustrating night against Lee. I didn't think we'll learn anything that we didn't know already. Leeds are very good when they get going like that, and they're almost unstoppable, especially against teams at the wrong end of the table. But the acid tests are still ahead for Leeds out there. I think we worked out yesterday, Leeds, as long as they beat Wigan, and it's a massive if, they only need to win 2 games, I think, don't they? So even if they do slip up against St Helens, that the Wigan game almost becomes a lifeline, doesn't it? Because you beat them and you're still top, or you go back top, sorry. Well, if Wigan beat OKR this week, which everyone seems to be predicting. But the one thing I don't know why they kept Jake Connor on as long as they did, because he was clearly struggling in the first half when Chris Hankinson took over kicking duties, and there were, what score was it at half time? 36 now.
36 now.
Yeah, so I'd have pulled him. I'd have taken him off at that point. It wasn't worth the risk. I'd have put Hankinson into the halves then and given him a proper rest. And in the end, he's hobbled off, which is never a good look. And it's an uncomfortable few days now for Leeds fans as they wait for an update. And like I say, if he's out and they're going to St Helens with Hankinson in the halves, I imagine it'd be him who stands in. It's a completely different game then, isn't it? So that's if Jake Connor can get, because he's been struggling, hasn't he, in recent weeks? He's had a few issues. I know a few of the Leeds players have. So it's just about managing them, but they do need those troops to return. Like you mentioned earlier, they've got some big hitters to come back in the next couple of weeks. So that should give them a lift, and it's all on that Wigan game, really, isn't it? That's going to be a massive. What a fixture that is in the penultimate round at Headingley under the lights. That'll be a cracking night, and that'll probably decide where the League Leaders Shield goes, because I know a lot of people talk it down, but it is important, especially for a club like Leeds who have gone best part of a decade without a Super League trophy. That'd be massive for them, and a huge lift going into the playoffs.
Sam Cook, can you see Wigan slipping up between now and, October, the grand final night?
it's a tough one to see them slipping up at the moment, isn't it? Really, I think they set their club record for the most Super League wins in a row the other night, and if I'm honest, I think they could just carry it straight through to the grand final. It depends if they I'm not sure if they beat Leeds, maybe they're clear at the top and they can rest players. I don't know how it will work. We're not, especially if Leeds obviously lose to Saints. But I think Wigan at the moment, you just wouldn't back against them like that. Since Bevan French has returned, they've been just at a different level. And the thing is, they've still not got any real senior second rowers in. I think Farrell and Nasemba both to return, which. You add them into anything, they're going to make a difference, even if it's just leadership from Liam Farrell and just how much of an athletic freak Nasemba is. I think that's just scary to know that they're going to add them two back in. And like I said, I don't expect them, even if KR do go full strength, which like I said, I don't think they should. But even if KR go full strength, I think Wigan cruise past them really. Then it's all in on that Leeds game, and I think that's the game where you're probably finding out who the grand final favourites are. And yet, even if Wigan lost, I think I still maybe fancy them for Old Trafford because they just have a way of winning there, don't they? But for me, I don't see Wigan losing again this season, which is a little bit boring, especially because then that would mean another treble for a third year running. There'd be a Wigan 24, KR 25 and Wigan 26. So you kind of want it to be a little bit different, but I'm finding it hard to predict otherwise.
Just away from Super League, there was big news on the international front this week when we discovered that Premier Sports have got the rights to cover the World Cup, which is coming up this autumn. So that means no coverage on free-to-air TV. Been a lot of disappointment about that. Lisa Nandy, who's from Wigan, I think she's the culture secretary, has said that she thinks the competition should be shown, so fans can watch it without a subscription. James, what do you think? Is it bad for the sport, or do we just have to accept in this commercial world whoever bids the most money is going to get it?
It's not great, is it? But it just shows where the international game is really. It's almost the forgotten element of rugby league. It's not ideal for us either, is it? We're going to have to get a Premier subscription if we want to cover these games. No one's going to send us out there, are they, to Australia to cover it? So I do. I love the games being on BBC, but what time will they be on? They'll be on it very early or very, very late, won't they? It's not ideal, but I just think it's just a symptom of what's been building really in the international game. We've just got to accept it. It's not ideal, but what can we do really? I think they said they gave the games previously, the international games, to BBC for free. Obviously, that's not sustainable if they want to make a profit out of it. So it's not ideal. But rugby league fans will find a way. Well, then they'll probably subscribe to the Premier, which we're all going to have to do, I think.
Sambi, will you be subscribing to Premier Sports?
Definitely, Pete. I think it's just fans. They want to make a profit, don't they? And I think recently the package has gone up. I think when it was first announced, it was something like £17 a month. It's now gone up to 18. So that's not great for fans. But I think Sam did an article on Troy Grant this morning, so he's probably got more details. But I think it's just, they want to make a profit, and, BBC had it for free, so you're not making any money there if you have it for free. So at least, if the sport gets some sort of incentive for it and the fans' money goes towards, the sport and, not all to Premier Sports, then at least that's some kind of positive out of it.
Go on then, Sam C, talk us through it.
Yeah, well, I think Troy Grant's basically said, we've advertised it and we're giving it away for free to bring fans in, and it's worked, but it can't work forever. Someone needs to pay for this, and basically he's kind of almost put it back on the BBC and says Channel 9 are buying it on in Australia and then putting it on free-to-air TV for them. But so why can't the BBC do the same? And that's something they've got to kind of speak to their viewers. And I think it's been similar. That's kind of, I think, the line that's coming out of International Rugby League. That's kind of what they're sticking with. I think, and I'm going to butcher his name, so I do apologise, but Danny Kazanjian, I'm going to guess is how we're saying it. He's also a member of the board, and he's basically I've seen a couple of Twitter exchanges with him where he's basically saying that they don't just British and Irish fans. The International Rugby League are in charge of 50 member countries, and ultimately they need to make a profit. So it's up to someone else to step up, because it's not for them to babysit, and ensure that we get free TV. And I think it's probably, from a business point, that's fair. And for so many years as well, we've lamented rugby league organisations, especially the RFL, that some of the nonsensical decisions, you can't really hammer someone for saying we're going to try and make a profit. I think that's what businesses need to do. I think the real shame is that the big, how well received the Ashes were last year. It wasn't just with rugby league fans. It went beyond that. And now, as soon as you say to someone, "Oh yeah, the World Cup's on. How are you going to watch it?" "Oh yeah, we've got to pay for it." Well, all those fans who watched for free, potentially went to Wembley where the tickets were, really well priced, or good at that, not good at St Hill Dickinson, and now they're just thinking, "Well, I'm not going to pay for it. I'd have watched it if it was for free." And I think that's the fans you kind of lose. Rugby league fans, as James says, will find a way, but I think rugby league fans are quite a small community, and it's kind of, we have closed it off. But again, you have to make profit as a business, and I think you can definitely see both sides of the argument. It's just selfishly, it's just a real shame for us in the UK.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the international game, just finally, a big news development during the week, which we haven't mentioned, is St Helens' new coach, Kevin Waters, the Australian coach. An eye-catching appointment, certainly. What do we think about that? Sam B, is he going to be a successor?
Well, you'd hope so. I think reports in Australia have said they've splashed the cash. It's quite a lucrative deal, 3-year contract. So the same as Paul Rowley, but you'd expect, given the money that they've spent, Kevin Walters is going to last more than 20 games or whatever Paul Rowley did. It's a statement of intent, isn't it? We talk about was it last week that we talked about the players coming over from Super League? The likes of Tuivasa-Sheck, Damien Cook. There's another one that I'm forgetting. Daly Cherry-Evans, how can you forget him? But the coaches as well. It's like, you get in the Australia coach, the coach that's likely going to win the World Cup, on paper especially. It's a statement of intent for Super League and for St Helens, and it's what a club that like St Helens deserves. And I just think, if he can't really bring success to the club, then who can? He's done it all. He's done Super League with Catalans, he's done the NRL with Brisbane, he's done State of Origin, he's done international, he's done every kind of level of senior rugby league coaching. And, if he can't bring success, then, who can?
Last word to you then, Sam Cook. What's your view on the appointment? He needs the players to work with, doesn't he? That's the key for any coach, really.
I mean, I think kind of relating back to what we said earlier about Jackson Hastings and that potential ban that he's going to get. Obviously, this podcast will come out after the match review panel have met, so you viewers will know better what sort of ban he's got. But do they sign him again, or does Kevin Walters go and get himself his own halfback? And I think that's the big thing, because Harry Robertson looks really comfortable at 6. Tristan Saylor's been brilliant at fullback. Jack Wellesby had a good game at centre. I mean, I'm not sure if that's the long-term plan there, but you finding that 7 to go with Harry Robertson is massive. And I think if he can bring his own person in, or if maybe he does already really like Jackson Hastings, but I think that's the key. You don't really win things without a spine, and I think that's where they're going to have to go. But as Sam said, in terms of coaching experience, and the fact that he's going to come in likely off the back of a World Cup win, it can't be better for Super League, and for Saints fans, really. It's just about finding some final pieces of the puzzle, because the youth below all that is amazing, as I've said earlier. So I think that's the piece that they really need to nail, and otherwise, I think if they do, then you could see Saints might shoot up the table for next year.
Right. That will do us for this portion of the show. Please join us later in the week for our preview edition when we look forward to this weekend's matches. Thank you to James from the Yorkshire Post and to the two Sams. Thank you to everybody for watching. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and tune in for another thrilling instalment later in the week. Thank you and goodbye.